Hello, good morning, and welcome to another moment where we talk about business. It is Business 360, and my name is Blyden. It's unfolding regarding WeWork as they've gone bankrupt. We'll look at the commodity market, the stock markets, and the different markets and the implications of different economic statistics around the world. Let's begin with bankruptcy statement from WeWork. WeWork has filed for bankruptcy in the U.S., a move that follows years of struggle for the co-working company. The firm reported liabilities of $10 billion to $50 billion according to a bankruptcy filing in the New Jersey federal court. The filing gives WeWork legal protection from its creditors and more tools for negotiation with landlords. WeWork, known for renting on flexible terms to startups and freelancers, was once seen as the future of the office, but it relied on rapid growth to match its steep costs. Still on the foreign scene, an Italian judge has ordered the seizure of 779.5 million euros from short-term rental giant Airbnb over alleged tax evasion. Prosecutors say the firm failed to collect a tax from landlords on around 3.7 billion euros of rental income. Landlords in Italy are required to pay a 21% tax on their earnings. Meanwhile, the U.S. President Joe Biden announced the latest funding to modernize key portions of the Amtrak, the United States of America's busiest rail corridor that stretches from Boston to Washington, D.C. on Monday. The president was speaking in Delaware, to announce more than $16 billion in new funding for 25 passenger rail projects. According to a statement from the White House, the investment announced will rebuild tunnels and bridges that are over 100 years old. Let's find out details and many more.
For a long time, I know, but finally we're getting it done. More than $16 billion, 16 with a B, billion dollars here in the Northeast. 25 different projects. All to build the Northeast Corridor from Boston to Washington. It's part of my agenda to invest in America, and I've been fighting for this for a long time. It includes the largest investment in passenger rail since Amtrak was created 50 years ago. $66 billion for world-class rail right here at home. And that includes the largest investment in the Northeast Corridor since the Pennsylvania Railroad laid down these tracks in 1850. Fully electrified trains on this corridor emit 83% less greenhouse gases, by the way.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese touts a strong relationship between Australia and China after meeting President Xi Jinping on Monday. He became the first Australian leader to visit Beijing in more than 7 years since 2016, signaling a thaw in relationships. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he had a very positive meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. Meanwhile, Xi said the relations between the two countries are on the right path. Let's hear more from the Australian leader.
Australia, along with other countries in the region, has an interest in continued stable growth in the Chinese economy and its ongoing engagement with the world. And I believe that we can all benefit from the greater understanding that comes from high-level dialogue and people-to-people links, and that a strong relationship between our two countries will be beneficial into the future. Where differences arise, it's important that we have communication. From communication comes understanding.
The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, concluded his Middle East diplomatic tour on Monday in Turkey. There was limited success in his furious efforts to forge a regional consensus on how best to ease civilian suffering in Gaza as Israel intensifies its war against Hamas. Let's look at details of this. all very much. And right here, sir, over here at the start. Please avoid where you. Okay.
This is a process. Israel's raised important questions about how humanitarian pauses would work. We've got to answer those questions. We're working on exactly that.
Meanwhile, Antony Blinken and his counterparts from Egypt and Jordan agreed on the need to do more to protect Palestinian civilians in Gaza. But a clear point of division emerged on the question of a possible ceasefire. Let's get details of this.
It's our view that a ceasefire now would simply leave Hamas in place, able to regroup and repeat what it did on October 7th. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just a few days ago, a senior Hamas official said that it was their intent to do October 7th again and again and again. No nation, none of us can accept that. No one would find that tolerable. And so it is important to reaffirm Israel's right to defend itself, indeed its obligation to do so, but it's also very important the way Israel does that. And that's what we've talked to the Israeli government about, with taking every possible measure to protect human life, to prevent civilian casualties, as well as to ensure that those who are in need have the assistance that they need.
It is the international community's responsibility always to seek the cessation of hostilities and not to promote the continuance of violence and military activity that has a very dire impact on the well-being of the civilian population in a very restricted area which has specific and special characteristics like Gaza.
The priority now is to ending this war, to saving innocent lives, to preventing further destruction, to restoring hope, and to stopping the very dangerous deal.
In Africa, a U.S. Democratic Senator Chris Coons, a prominent figure in U.S. Africa policy, has proposed a 16-year extension for the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, that provides duty-free access to the U.S. market for eligible African countries. Discussions are currently in progress regarding the renewal of the program that has been in place for 2 decades and is set to expire in 2025. In 2022, African exports worth over $10 billion are sent to the United States duty-free through the program. Due to growing financial distress concerns among numerous African nations and Beijing's domestic economic difficulties, China has slowed down supporting energy projects in Africa, bringing total loans to the continent down to less than $1 billion, the lowest level in over 2 decades. A recent Boston University report reveals China's shift in lending policy, while President Xi Jinping emphasizes the Green Belt and Road Initiative. Now in Nigeria, the federal government revealed that more than 4.3 trillion naira worth of crude oil was stolen in 7,143 pipeline vandalism and its cases within a period of 5 years. It was disclosed at the Nigeria International Pipeline Technology and Security Conference in Abuja with the theme, Fostering Regulation, Technology and Security Growth. In a presentation at the conference by the Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, a federal government agency, the organization revealed that the oil theft and losses in Nigeria had become a natural and national emergency. Quite concerning from there. But let's talk about the fish rating of Nigeria. Fish Ratings has projected that Nigeria's inflation rate will moderate to 21.1% in 2024 from an average of 24.8% in 2023. The global rating firm disclosed this in a recent report, which affirmed Nigeria's long-term foreign currency issuer default and its outlook at a be stable outlook. According to the firm, Nigeria's inflation, a significant economic indicator, would decrease by 5.62 from 26.72% in September rating. Now, the Debt Management Office, DMO, has opened the sale of its savings bond to retail investors with a promise of a higher return than last month's auction as interest rate adjustment in West Africa's biggest economy gather pace. The DMO noted that a minimum amount to be invested in the savings bond is 5,000 naira, while a maximum of 50 million naira can be invested. The offer represents 139 basis points higher than the 11.07% it went for in October, while the 3-year bond will be sold at 18.46%, also higher than the 12.07% it sold for last month. The government fixed the closing date for November 10th, while the settlement date is November 15th, 2023. It added that interest will be paid quarterly with coupon payment dates of February 15th, May 15th, and August 15th, as well as November 15th. Now, looking at top banks in Nigeria as they grew profits to 2.1 trillion naira in the third quarter. At least 6 of the top banks in Nigeria grew their profits by 214% to 2.06 trillion naira in the period ended September 2023, compared to 656.15 billion naira recorded in the same period in 2022, despite the economic headwinds of its operating environment. According to the financial statement filed with the Nigerian Exchange Limited, the financial institution's profit jumped by 1.4 trillion naira within the period under review when compared year on year. The banks under review include Access Holdings plc, Zenith Bank International, United Bank for Africa, Guarantee Trust Holding Company plc, First Bank of Nigeria Holding, and Stanbic IBTC Holdings. The report showed that all banks recorded triple-digit growth in their profit, led by Zenith Bank, whose total comprehensive income for the period increased by 412.55% to 647.74 billion naira from 126.37 billion naira. UBA followed as it experienced 287.18% increase in profits over the period to 109.25 billion naira. We'll go on a short break. When we return, it will be Business 360, looking at economic statistics all around the world and the markets. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It is Business 360, and my name is Blyden Okem. Looking at economic statistics all around the world, beginning with China's exports, as exports extend fall and imports unexpectedly rise. China's export fell 6.4% year-on-year in October 2023, the 6th straight month of drop, and was worse than market forecast of 3.3% decline amid deteriorating demand from abroad due to persistent cost pressure. Meanwhile, imports unexpectedly grew by 3%, beating consensus of a 4.8% fall, while marking the first rise since February following efforts from Beijing to stimulate domestic demand and signs of stockpiling. In Australia, the Reserve Bank of Australia raised its cash rate by 25 basis points to 4.35% in November, after maintaining it at 4.1% in the prior 4 months, in line with market expectations. Today's move brought borrowing costs to their highest level since January 2011, marking the 13th rate rise since May 2022, as inflation proved more persistent than expected a few months ago due to a further rise in prices of services. Consumer Price Index inflation is now projected to be around 3 to 1.5% by the end of 2024, and at the top of the target range of 2 to 3% by the end of 2025. New Governor Michelle Bullock said in a statement that whether further tightening is needed to bring inflation returns to the target in a reasonable time frame will depend upon the data and the evolving assessment of risks. Meanwhile, the board also hiked the interest rates on exchange settlement balances at 4.25%. In Africa, gross foreign exchange reserves in South Africa decreased further to $60.962 billion in October 2023 from $61.131 billion in the previous month. This was the smallest amount since December 2022 amid declines in foreign currency reserves at $46.741 billion against $47.377 billion in September, and HDR holdings the $6.16 billion against $6.216 billion. Also, the forward position representing the central bank's unsettled or swap transactions edged lower to $0.508 billion from $0.511 billion in September. Meanwhile, gold reserve increased at $8.058 billion against $7.538 billion previously. It would be a good time to look at the commodity market, what the prices for crude oil would be this morning. Brent crude futures slipped below $85 per barrel today, giving back gains from the previous session as investors continue to assess the global demand and supply outlooks. Markets also digested data showing Chinese exports fell more than expected in October, clouding the demand outlook in the world's top crude importer, China. Moreover, oil prices came under pressure recently, losing nearly 6% last week amid growing optimism that the Israel-Hamas war could be prevented from spreading through the Middle East and disrupting oil supplies from the region. And quickly, let's move to the market and see what the prices are, beginning with the energy market. And afterwards, we'll look at the metal market and agricultural market this morning, the energy market. The energy market this morning shows the price of crude oil, U.S. crude, the West Texas Intermediate crude, at $79 per barrel, downward by 1.682 points, while Brent, which is Nigeria's price benchmark, at $83, downward by 1.771 point. Natural gas, gasoline, heating oil are all downward slightly this morning, but the price of coal equally downward by 2.5 points this morning. Let's look at the metals, what the prices are for the metals. The metal market price of gold, our current price standing at $1,965 per ounce, dropping on a negative 11.87 points, a negative 0.6% decline. Silver price also on the downward pedestal, a negative 0.372 points drop, negative 1.61% decline. Copper downward, steel price downward 15 points. And it's been concerning amid trade data outlook regarding export in China and imports in China. Now let's talk about the agricultural market, what the prices are for the agricultural commodities. Soybeans price downward by 4 points, $1,336 per bushel. Wheat price also downward by 4.43 points, $571 per bushel is the price of wheat. Palm oil equally downward, 30 points, 3,723 Malaysian ringgit per ton is the price of palm oil, and the markets have been hugely negative. Let's look at the foreign exchange market now. Zambia's central bank has announced its intention to increase the minimum mandatory reserves of both local and foreign currency deposits that commercial banks are required to maintain, with a state institution stating next week to counteract the devaluation of the local kwacha currency, the Zambian currency, the kwacha. The Apex Bank stated in a circular that it will raise the statutory reserve ratio for deposits in both local and foreign currencies by 3 percentage points to 14.5% effective from November 18th. This action is intended to alleviate ongoing pressure on the foreign exchange market and to control inflation, as stated by the Bank of Zambia. Zambia's kwacha has experienced a significant 21% decline against the US dollar since the end of June, according to recent reports. Globally, only Argentina's peso has performed worse. Let's move to the market itself and see what the prices are for the euro against the US dollar, the majors, and afterwards we'll look at Naira's perspective in the market this morning, the euro against the US dollar. The euro against the US dollar indicates price level as at 1.069 points, while dropping slightly from yesterday's 1.07 point mark, a 0.0024 points decrease, a negative 0.23% decline. For the pound state against the dollar, it's at 1.23 point mark, a slight decline of 0.26%. The Aussie against the US dollar is on the negative, and most of the markets are hugely on the negative. The US dollar doing better than the Japanese yen, gaining 0.325 points. 150 yen equals 1 US dollar. Now to Naira. 799 Naira equals 1 US dollar at the international exchange window. At the closure of yesterday's market, the euro against the Naira indicated a price level of 866 Naira for 1 euro. The euro gaining 1.298 points over the Naira, a 0.15% advantage. The pound against the Naira stood at 1,001 Naira, equaling 1 pound, a gain of 3.763 points in favor of the pound over the Naira, a 0.38% advantage at the closure of yesterday's market. While looking at the cryptocurrency market and the parallel market afterwards, let's talk about the parallel market first before the cryptos. A dollar to Naira, 1,037 Naira equals $1 at the buying rate, and selling rate 1,010 Naira. A pound to Naira at the buying rate, 1,280 Naira equaling 1 pound, and 1,220 Naira at the selling rate. The euro to Naira, 1,105 Naira to the euro, and 1,075 Naira to the euro at the selling rates. Well, the Naira has built a different momentum, crashing from the standing it was on Monday against the dollar, falling 1,030 per dollar on the average. Well, quickly, let's talk about Bitcoin and the rest of the cryptocurrency commodities or pairs. Our Bitcoin price now at $34,684 US dollars, downward this morning by 354 points, a negative 1.01% decline. The price of Ether is also downward by 16.57 points, a negative 0.88% decline. Well, 1,876 US dollar is the price of Ether. Binance gaining 6.1 points, Cardano a little here, a little there, Solana dropping 1.1064 points. And now to the currency markets, rather the stock markets. Beginning with the Asian stocks. Asian equity market fell today, snapping a winning streak as Treasury yields rebounded, with the benchmark 10-year US yield rising back about 4.6% after hitting an over 1 month low of 4.48% on Friday. Investors also cautiously awaited Chinese trade figures to gauge the health of the world's second largest economy, and the outcome wasn't that good, as well as the latest policy decision from the Reserve Bank of Australia. Shares in Australia, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, and mainland China all declined. Let's look at the Asian stock in the markets itself and see what the prices and the outlook seem to be this morning. The Asian stock. Asian stock beginning with Japanese stock JP225 dropping 443 points this morning on the negative. Also, the Shanghai stock, the China Shanghai stock, current index level is 3,057 index points, dropping 1 point, and the CSI 300 dropping 13 points, Shanghai 50 dropping 13 points this morning, and it's been the story of the Asian stock on the decline. Let's also have a look at the African stock market and what the price level is this morning, the African stock market. Identities of the market has been at different level, beginning with the Nigerian Stock Exchange, gaining 40 points this morning. 70,519 all-share index is the price, but gaining 40 basis points this morning. While the South African stocks have shown decline, huge decline in the morning market, 1,284 points decline and 1,293 point decline for the South African all stock market. Egyptian stock are on the front foot, gaining this morning by 59 points, and the Central African stock market gaining 15 points. Let's also look at the company stocks in the morning market, the price level for Apple's, Tesla, and the rest. Apple's price at $179 per share, getting this morning 2.58 points or 1.46%, and Tesla dropping slightly after recent gains, dropping 2.17 points, a negative 0.99%. And Microsoft also on the gain this morning by 3.73 points, and Amazon 1.14 points gain, a 0.82 percentage increment, and Meta at a price level of $315 per share, gaining 1.2 points, a 0.38%. It's the story of the stocks and the markets, and here we draw the curtain in today's edition of Business 360. Thank you for being a part of it. My name is Blyden Kim.